Throughout history, there's always been an obsession towards dangerously seductive women. She's beautiful and mysterious, but also manipulative and callous, which often leads to the destruction of men. In other words, a femme fatale. We see this archetype in many areas, ranging from paintings, movies, and literature. But when you look closely into its history and rise to popularity, it reveals something much deeper than just a mere obsession. It actually reflects the fear and anxiety felt by the Western world as the status of women started to shift through history. The femme fatale we all know and love today dates back to the 19th century. However, the archetype of a deadly seductress has existed since ancient times. One of the earliest examples would be Lilith from Judaic mythology. She is known as the first wife of Adam and is casted out of the Garden of Eden for disobeying her husband. In ancient Greece, we see characters such as Circe. Circe, from the poem Odysseus, is a goddess who turns humans into animals with drugs and spells. When the hero Odysseus visited her island, she turned his companions into swine. However, Odysseus was able to protect himself from the spell with the help of a herb. The first and most noticeable craze towards the femme fatale occurred during the late 19th century. Many artists portrayed the archetype through ancient mythology, most commonly of the biblical and Judaic characters Salome and Judith. One of the common characteristics of these two women is that they both caused the death of powerful men through the means of beheading. Salome, who was granted a wish by the king after dancing in front of him, wished for the head of John the Baptist on a platter. And Judith used her beauty and seductiveness to slaughter the head of a military commander in order to save her city from invasion.
What would you have for your dance?
I want, on a silver platter.
What on a silver platter? A ruby, a diamond, a pearl?
I want the head of John the Baptist.
But why were people all of a sudden infatuated by this theme? You see, the 19th century was also a period when the roles of women in society started shifting. In other words, it was when the first feminist movement emerged. During this time, many families in rural areas were forced to move into cities due to the industrial and agricultural movement. In order to support their families, many women and children worked in factories. However, compared to men, women were paid less and often was subjected to workplace discrimination. Due to this, women started to become more vocal about their inequality, not just in their workplace, but in political and social spheres as well. As women gained more independence, it caused a growing fear in society. Prior to the movement, each gender had an assigned role in society. Men would work outside, and women would stay at home and take care of the children. In fact, up until then, women were actually seen as property of the husband, rather than an individual person. Thus, it caused many people to have mixed feelings towards the movement. And this is what's reflected in these paintings. It mirrors the fear and anxiety towards independent women. This is also why many of these femme fatale figures are often combined with the theme of death. For instance, this is a piece from Edvard Munch called Madonna. It depicts a naked woman in the dark with a red halo on her head. Surrounding her are swimming sperms and a ghostly fetus looking towards the figure. Despite the title Madonna, which refers to the Virgin Mary, the painting has a seductive and mysterious mood to it. In this piece, Munch portrays his personal experience of relationships and loss in his life. However, it's also an immediate reaction towards the shifting social status of women. In a short text describing the piece, he writes, "The pause when the whole world stopped in its tracks. Your face encompasses all of the earth's beauty. Your lips, red like ripening fruit, separate as though in pain. The smile of a corpse, now life offers death its hand. The chain has been linked, which connects the millennium of generations that are deceased to the millennium of generations that are to come. The same thing occurred in Hollywood during the early 20th century. During the silent film era, we see the first vamp, Theda Bara, emerge in films such as A Fool There Was. In the beginning, femme fatales were portrayed as foreign seductresses with non-Western features. But as Hollywood entered into its golden era of the 1940s, we start to see femme fatales with more Western characteristics and features. Most noticeable examples are Gilda, The Postman Always Rings Twice, and Leave Her to Heaven. The rise in popularity of femme fatale films is caused by the same fear we saw in the late 19th century, the fear of independent women. It all begins with World War II. As men left to fight in the war, women supported their country by taking up jobs traditionally occupied by men. This included jobs such as construction, assembling weapons, and driving trucks. Nearly 1/4 of married women in the US during 1945 worked outside of their home. Even though women were often paid less than their male counterparts, they were still paid better compared to previous times. Thus, with more money, women were able to have more freedom to enjoy their spare time. And so, just like the 19th century, this became a hot topic in society. What were women doing when their husbands were away, fighting in the war? However, despite its initial intention to demonize liberated women, the films actually had the opposite effect. Many of those who enjoyed the femme fatale archetype were actually women themselves. She was rebellious, smart, enjoyed her sexuality, and most of all, looked fabulous. Thus, in a way, the femme fatale spread an empowering message and inspired many women to write their own narrative in life. Today, femme fatales are seen less often compared to the 19th century and the golden age of Hollywood. The main reason for this is that it's become less taboo for women to enjoy their own sexuality and freedom. In fact, the archetype is seen more as a symbol of female empowerment and is praised for its rebellious characteristic. But as we look back to its history and roots, it reminds us of the struggle women had to go through for generations. The freedom and individuality we often take for granted in our everyday lives is something that took women centuries to gain.